Let's start by introducing yourself.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Justin, and I'm currently a senior at the USC Alving and Young Academy. In this very interdisciplinary program, I have trained myself to have strong fundamentals in design, CS, as well as venture management. So overall, I'm just think I am like really excited for working at an intersection of different kind of technologies. I began my career as a UX designer, but found myself gravitating toward kind of more interdisciplinary and larger responsibilities wherever I go, from designing the business plan and tripling the projected revenue as a UX lead in a startup to actually working at Amazon handling UX research opportunities and also coding a platform that shortened the team's UX data analysis process from a few days to a few hours as a UX design intern. And this year, as a senior, I finally got around to founding my own startup as well, leading both UX and front-end engineering. So overall, even though my primary commitment is still to the user, trying to build the best experience possible, I've really grown to like a variety of different aspects of business, from revenue to coding to user research. And that's why I think the PM role is really fitted for me. And Instacart's four-sided marketplace provides me with a lot of opportunities to dive into different aspects of the market and navigate complex challenges to build the best experience for the users. That's why I'm here today.
Yeah, sounds good. Background is pretty impressive. Our question today is, imagine you are the CEO or CPO for Instacart, and you have maybe a daily dashboard that you want to check out every single day. The first thing after you get up from your bed, can you tell me what are the metrics that you want to check on a daily basis for Instacart?
Yeah, for sure. So would you mind if I actually first ask a few clarification questions just to make sure that I'm understanding the prompt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Instacart, just I'm going to repeat this back to help me. Instacart is a business that allows users to be able to kind of hire drivers to go around to different grocery stores to obtain items and kind of have them like shipped back to them as conveniently as possible. Um, and then the users, from my perspective, we know that it's a four-sided marketplace. We have both the customers who are trying to order, the drivers who are fulfilling the orders, and then we have the stores or the retailers that are participating with Instacart, as well as finally the ads, they're kind of brand individuals who are trying to promote their product on Instacart. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, and also just kind of moving forward with the current state of Instacart, we know that it's one of the leading retailer businesses in the entire US. I'm assuming that it's in a very mature place with a large amount of users. Just also wanted to check that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have another question just to confirm as well. Since you mentioned that it's for Instacart as a whole, I'm assuming that I'm not diving into any particular aspect and just kind of considering the whole business and its success metrics.
Yeah.
Got it. And then my last question, I think I'm having a general idea now, but just one more question before we move forward. I am interested in knowing if this success metrics is, are we more interested in short term, like 6 month, for the next quarterly review, or are we interested in something more long term, like 10-year plan?
Hmm. I will be interested in both. If you want to talk about like what is the difference between short term and long term.
Mm, yeah, for sure. I think, in my personal opinion, the difference between short term and long term right now, in the short term aspect, is really about, I think it's more about just kind of, specifically taking care of the users and growing our revenue, as well as I think recently there's a very large emphasis on AI, thinking about different ways to integrate innovative solutions into the business. Whereas something more long term could potentially involve more strategic planning, like other industries that we're trying to expand into, because we want to make sure that we target growth, and different markets that we can expand to. I know Instacart has recently launched Instacart Business, so not only targeting small individual owners, but also business owners at large. So if I were to focus on short term, I probably would be focusing more on specific, user engagement metrics as well as integration of AI technology. Whereas long term, I might be spending more of my energy focusing on the different areas of the market that Instacart is not in that we want to expand to. Do you think you have a preference for any of those two?
I will want to hear you out on both, if we have time, but please prioritize short term over long term. Yeah, if you don't have enough time.
Got it. Cool. So the way that I plan to approach this is by um, dividing this into a few steps. So first of all, I'm going to be just looking at Instacart's overall mission as well as the goal of the Instacart product, and just to kind of zooming out and understand a little bit more about the context. After that, I'll dive into using that information to create a North Star metric that can drive and frame our entire discussion. And then after the North Star metric, I'll be experimenting with different sub-metrics for the different user groups just to kind of buttress that and provide a more comprehensive picture. And then after my list of brainstorming for the different sub-metrics, I will move on to a final recommendation by prioritizing the different features we have talked about. Does that sound good to you?
That's good.
Cool. So if you don't mind, I'm going to begin with the company product mission. I would like to share my screen so that we can kind of walk through my written process together, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Got it. Okay. So we're starting off with a blank screen, but we're going to first dive into the company as well as the product mission. So from our discussion, we understand that Instacart's goal is really to try to bring food and other grocery items to users as conveniently as possible. This is just kind of the overall value proposition, the top line goal for the company as a whole. And then moving on, I think given Instacart being in the grocery space, I think it's beneficial to look at some competitors as well, just to see how Instacart differentiates itself. So I'm going to be thinking about different competitors in the grocery space. Obviously, we have Amazon, or specifically Amazon Fresh, since we're targeting groceries. We have Target. And then another company that I can think of off the top of my head is Walmart. So in my personal opinion, what truly differentiates Instacart from all of these companies is its wide range of selections. So both Target and Walmart we see focus on specifically their own store and deliver from their own store, whereas Amazon Fresh also has its own collection of different kind of providers and retailers. Whereas Instacart, since we rely on drivers specifically, we have this level of like unmatched variety in our goods. So I would say our key competitive advantage from all of these products is our unmatched variety. Yeah. So that kind of concludes my analysis of the company and the product mission. Do you have any questions so far?
Yeah, Walmart and Target is also our clients on Instacart as a platform. So how do you see our role as a competitor and as a platform with Walmart and Target? And what specifically do you think we're competing with these two companies?
Yeah, so as far as my understanding concerns, Target and Walmart both have their own mobile app as well. So Instacart, one of our primary products in our product line is our app and our web interface, which the users will use to kind of order things online. So I think Walmart and Target are our collaborators in the sense that they are our retailers that we work with. So whether that means that we're not as concerned about their like in-store sales and anything on that front, like in the physical experience. On that part, we're collaborating with them. That is something that we would love to see them kind of do well on. Whereas I think the main point of competition between us and Walmart and Target comes from the digital app and their digital products. In that front, we're going to be competing for users. So specifically, I would say we are mostly trying to differentiate ourselves from them in terms of our digital app.
Okay. And why do you think they both have their digital app? Well, they already have the collaboration with Instacart.
Yeah, so I think one thing that definitely want to do is not to overly rely on Instacart as a platform. And that we are the leading product in the industry, so making sure that we're not monopolizing, and so if they are constantly like exclusively relying on us as a supplier, that gives us too much leverage to be able to like make demands later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on top of that, another thing is that they're also going to be trying to develop their own kind of products in a way to better integrate with their service. Because for us, with Instacart, people need to go through like multiple different platforms. And from a revenue standpoint, Instacart is going to be taking a large percentage of that. Whereas if Walmart and Target were to develop their own kind of delivery app, then they can take all of the revenue without going through like multiple intermediaries to, kind of have a larger share of the profit. So I would say overall, from both a profit standpoint and from a maintaining independence standpoint, they will be trying to compete with us by building their own app. Do you happen to have any other questions, or should we try to move forward?
Let's move on.
All right, cool. So now, moving on, I'm just going to be looking at some of the possible North Star metrics that we can identify for Instacart as a whole. I think some of the things that immediately come to mind are the overall number of successful orders. Something else that comes to mind is the number of active daily users. Both of these would be indicating like how actively people are using the platform and giving us an idea of how Instacart is doing at engaging its users. I am in this case more inclined to go with the first option, overall number of successful orders, because it is something, if people are spending a lot of time on the site but not really making orders, they're not really fulfilling their jobs to be done, and we're not really generating revenues as a result of that. So I think overall, pretty straightforward. I would like to keep our North Star metric as just overall number of successful orders. I would like to actually specify on a daily basis. So daily average. I'm going to be moving forward with kind of defining some sub-metrics if you're okay with that.
Can you explain a little bit more? If you are the CEO or CPO of Instacart, why should you care about the number of successful orders?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to think about this from the perspective of our users, right? So we have the customers who are trying to use Instacart, and their primary jobs to be done is actually just trying to complete their orders so that they can gather what they need in the as efficient of a format as possible. And then we have our drivers, who are the second kind of aspect of our marketplace. For them, the goal is really just to generate as much revenue as possible by kind of completing as many orders for the customers as possible. They're there to really make money, and the only way in which they can do so is by completing orders. From the retailer standpoint, the more orders there are, the more kind of profit they make. Should be pretty straightforward as well. And finally, from the ads and the kind of branding advertiser standpoint, with more orders, they're also going to be kind of seeing a larger impact on the money that they're spending on creating the ads. So I would say overall, considering the needs and the values that all of the four sides of the marketplace are getting out of Instacart, they all converge into this point of the number of orders there are. So that's why I'm inclined to choose this, because it really reflects that people are getting their jobs done.
Let me ask this question in another way. How do you define successful in the successful orders?
So for successful order, I would be defining it specifically as the number of orders that kind of go from beginning to end. The number of orders that would end with the orders being delivered, and so I would say that it ends with a delivery instead of getting canceled halfway through, or anything like that. And then I would also, let me think a little bit more about this. I think another aspect of successful order is that at the end, there was no request for return. Or any kind of like specific, or any kind of specific like user reported issues, like logs of user complaint. For example, a product has gone missing, or the driver did not deliver on time, or that there was kind of really like bad product, or products that have not matched the user standard. So I would say it comes from, it will come out, if I were to define a successful order, I would be looking at these three different components here.
Okay.
Got it. Cool. So now moving on from the North Star metrics to some of the sub metrics that we should be tracking as well. I think we're going to be considering this from the perspective of each of our individual side of the marketplace. So from a customer perspective, I think some things that will be good to track are actually, would you mind if I take a few moments to collect my thought and just kind of to
Sure, go ahead.
think about all of this together at once before I present?
Yeah.
So just one moment. Yeah, so after some thoughts, I think I would like to present a few sub-metrics for that I would like to track alongside the number of successful daily orders. So firstly, from the customer standpoint, in addition to just tracking the overall number of successful orders, I will be specifically paying attention to the number of customers that actually place the orders. So this is just the way we measure this is by tracking the active accounts and the number of accounts that place the orders, in addition to the gross overall total. I think this would really allow us to be able to understand that there's not just only a few users that are placing the orders, but rather that overall people across the board are engaging in placing orders. And then I will also be thinking from a more user experience standpoint of the ratio of the customers that start an order versus the number of customers that complete an order. I think this metric is really important because it gives us an idea of how smooth the user experience is, whether or not people are able to really complete the order in a very easy way, not abandoning it halfway through because of any UX problem or any other kind of hiccups during the process. And they'll also be looking at, lastly, the cancellation of orders that as a way to check to see if customers have anything, gone wrong in the process, and the different ways in which they have found problems with the product. So we do not only want, this is kind of more of like a guardrail metric, because we do not only want people to be making orders, we also want to make sure that the orders that they're making are very high quality and actually match what they're looking for. So having the number of cancellations on there could be a successful guardrail to see if we're having a lot of orders, making sure that all of them are high quality. Similarly, for the drivers, I would like to first and foremost try to track the number of trips completed. So by that, I mean, if we consider each one of the successful delivery as a trip, then how many do those drivers complete on a daily basis? And alongside that, the number of drivers that complete a trip each day. So this way, we're similar to the customers. We're also checking to see if if the drivers are all participating overall, or are there just only a few power users, which wouldn't be indicating a healthy platform. And lastly, also kind of as a guardrail metric, we'll be checking to see the number of cancel requests, just because the order number is really high, doesn't mean that we should kind of ignore when drivers are being placed in unreasonable or like unnecessarily long kind of shopping or order requests. So being able to check that is something that we also want to do to ensure that drivers are kind of being given reasonable tasks to complete. When it comes to the retailer's standpoint, I will be mostly just straight up considering the number of goods that are being sold from the retailer's perspective, seeing how many, how many kind of what's like the volume of the orders that are coming in, which directly leads to the amount of profit that they will be able to make. Checking that as a good way to see whether or not our retailers are getting the profit that they would expect by engaging with Instacart. And then finally, when it comes to the advertisers, to ensure that they're really also getting what they want out of the experience, we want to make sure to check the click-through rates of the ads to make sure that customers are actually engaging with the ads, and seeing whether or not also just kind of seeing whether or not like the ads that are being placed on the platform are actually effective. So these are kind of some of the initial metrics that I will try to check to determine success. Once again, success really means being able to serve all of our four sides of the marketplace well. So that's kind of some of my initial thoughts. Do you have any questions?
And this is what you're talking about as short-term metrics that you want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
What about long-term?
From the long-term perspective, so would you give me just also a few minutes to kind of think through? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, I think for the long-term metrics, I will mostly be going in three different directions. Once again, talking about long-term, I think over here we're thinking 10 years plus. So, which means that there's a lot of opportunities for Instacart to start brand new initiatives and engaging with completely different markets. So the first long-term metrics that I would check is the number of different user groups served. As we're already seeing Instacart starting to do, is they're expanding beyond just individual customers and moving on to business owners as another kind of new user group that they would like to serve. So the benefit of bringing in all of these different user groups is that it does kind of go back and contribute to our North Star metrics of overall number of successful orders in each day. As we have more different groups of users engaged with the product, we're going to naturally see a higher number of orders. Another area of long-term measures I would check is the different regions entered. Once again, currently Instacart is only, to my knowledge, operating within Canada as well as the United States. So thinking about different regions that it could enter, whether it be Europe or Asia, is a great way for them to increase the number of successful orders every day, and thus generating more revenue and meeting the needs of each of the individual market side of the marketplace. And then the third thing, because going back to our key competitive advantage of having unmatched variety, I would like to see Instacart continue to maintain its competitive advantage compared to other major players in the retail online grocery market by just expanding the number of retail partners we work with. So in addition to just mostly groceries or wholesale stores, I would expect Instacart to also expand into perhaps the snacks industry, the bakery industry, or even perhaps like, restaurants and, just other different forms of like supply that users will be needing in a daily basis as a way to maintain our key competitive advantage, attracting more people to Instacart and still leading to a higher number of overall successful orders. So I would say those are the three main metrics that I'll be tracking for a long-term metric standpoint.
Do you have any other things to add?
Let me quickly think about this. I'm going to be looking through back at both the short-term and the long-term metrics because, in my opinion, this is never just like a linear process. So it's always good to go back and just keep checking myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I would like to add is, as I was talking about earlier, for the short-term sub-metrics, AI is really hot in the market nowadays. So all of the different kind of groceries industries are kind of thinking about different AI solutions to integrate into their product workflow. So thinking about the different ways to successfully integrate AI into all the different sides of our marketplace would be a interesting metric to keep track of. And obviously here, just wanted to kind of note that we're talking about successful AI integrations. And what success really means is AI integrations that are able to meaningfully really drive up each of the previous metrics that have been mentioned. For example, if we have just an AI integration that really doesn't increase any of our previous metrics for indicating success, then I wouldn't consider it to be a meaningful expenditure of our resources, as well as just it's not going to be like a meaningful reflection on how AI is being used to help us achieve our goals. So I think one thing that I would think about is the number of successful AI integrations into the business as a way to indicate that our Instacart is staying up to date with all the new technological advancements.
Anything else?
I think that should be it for what I can be thinking about off the top of my head.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think of your own answer?
What was that? What do I think of my own answer? I think just to debrief a little bit, I think I definitely rambled a lot in many of the kind of categories. I think I can definitely be structuring the answer in a more concise way. I think I can definitely dive a little bit deeper into both the retailers and the advertisers to ensure that their needs are being really met and proper measures are being thought of to reflect kind of their needs being met in those categories. And I think one thing that I didn't do as well is I didn't start with the users when I was defining the North Star metrics, and you kind of had to prompt me to do that. So if I were to do this again, even though I was able to give the answer as a result of your prompt, I would actually be thinking about the users a little bit earlier and using kind of their value and their jobs to be done to come up with the North Star metric.
Mhm. Yeah. Overall, I think it's a pretty good answer. You have great communication. Your answer is very structured. I don't actually mind you rumble a lot. I think it is just like your way of communication, and I feel very comfortable with you communicating with me. You have a very structured answer. You have your framework, and the good thing is you always recap if you have a lot of bullet point. So that is very helpful for interviewer. And also your communication style is very conversational, right? So if I have any questions, if I have any feedback, I can just give you real time, which is a very friendly way to communicate in an interview. You don't want an interviewer to hide how they think, right? You want them to provide feedback as fast as possible so you can adjust your answer to their direction. And also, your thinking is very strategic. So at a very early stage, you talk about, let's say like company mission, and also you talk about like you're thinking of short-term strategy and long-term strategy. And from how you frame it, I feel like you have a clear understanding of the company strategy. And also you were talking about AI integration and also the market expansion. These for all the tech companies is the top priorities right now. So definitely give an interviewer the impression of you keep track of what is happening in the tech world. So very strategic, and you always start from job to be done, which is a very good quality from a product manager. And I usually don't recommend the candidate to share their screen, because when you share screen, you typically slow down like your thinking and how you communicate with the interviewer, because most likely the interviewer won't even look at your screen. The interviewer will take their own notes. But when you share your screen, you didn't slow down your narrative, which is a pretty good communication style. And also, lastly, to check your own answer and reflect on it, which is very funny and also a very green flag as a candidate. So you notice that when you are talking about your short term, you talk about AI, but and later on, you didn't really talk about AI in your short term metrics, and you added that in, which is a very good thing as a candidate, because from the interviewer perspective, I know you always reflect yourself and see how can you do better. This is a very good quality too, especially for like entry-level product management roles. So like for entry-level product manager, especially like for students aspiring product manager who didn't have any product management experience before, we really care whether you have framework when you like talk about like product ideas or metrics problem, whether you are very clear in your thinking process, whether you communicate well, and also whether you are educatable, right? And the fact that you check on your own answer and reflect on it and like see how you can improve is a sign of you are very educatable. Some constructive feedback. First, when you talk about mission, like people in this Zoom meeting, okay, there are 23 people in this Zoom meeting, apart from us, 21 people. Remember, when you talk about mission and vision, you have to make sure it is exactly their mission or vision, okay? I'd expect you guys not to change a single word, okay? This is just like your preparation before you interview that company. If now you're interviewing Instacart, I'm asking the Instacart mission. You have to tell me word by word, okay? Not to have a single mistake. If I'm interviewing on maybe Airbnb, you can just like, make sure you are as accurate as possible, because you didn't do research on Airbnb as much you do research on Instacart. That's understandable, right? But now we are talking about Instacart. While you're interviewing Instacart, I would expect you to say the mission, exactly the word. So their mission is to create a world where everyone has access to the food they love and more time to enjoy it together. What do you know from their mission?
I think there's an aspect of inclusivity in there with creating a world where everyone has food access.
Yeah.
So that means that they're from the beginning, from the get-go, kind of committed to diversity, which we can see from a lot of their initiatives targeting specifically Black-owned, Latin American-owned businesses. So there's a very high focus on diversity right there. And I think there's also an idea of togetherness, or the idea of kind of like bring everybody together and everybody benefiting, which I think is really deeply reflective from their deep commitment to caring for all four sides of the marketplace. So those are the two things I take away, in addition to still their commitment to just bring items and having the most convenient and speedy delivery service.
Yeah, and you talk about speedy delivery service as well, right? Because they say more time.
Yes.
So you can know a lot from their mission, right? They want everyone to have access to the food they love and more time to enjoy it together, right? Every company's mission is like went through so much scrutiny before they launch to the public, right? So you have to really dive deeper into their mission and see what are the things that they really value.
Absolutely.
You will change a lot of things on your answer after you dive deeper on into the mission. But after that, when I ask you success orders, you dive deeper into user segments, which is great. But you didn't say how you define successful, right? When you define a success metric, or when you talk about any metrics, when it comes to like a product execution question, you have to see me as your data scientist. If you tell me to count all the successful orders, I would be like, what the fuck, right? What do you mean by successful, right? I don't have a thing to calculate. I don't know how you define successful, right? You have to tell me, what do you mean by successful? So you then said you, like, first of all, end with delivery. Second, you no request for return and also no complaints, right? And then you can tell me that first, these are the delivered, and also we have the like paid, right, orders. And then they're not returned, they don't have bad complaints. And then you have to tell me, what do you mean by bad complaints? Are you talking about like 1 out of 5 is bad complaint, 2 out of 5 is bad complaint, 3 out of 5 is it bad, 4 out of 5 is good enough, right? You have to tell me how to calculate it. So here, I think you could have like said more in a more detailed way. Or otherwise as your cross-functional partner, I don't know how to calculate this, right? And also, I keep pointing out, you're the CEO for Instacart, you're the CPO for Instacart. Why should you care the order number? Why don't you care about the revenue? If you only have an order number, and for every order you only have like $1 committed, why should I care, right? Like one order and $1,000 order versus $100 orders with like each of them $1. Like, which one should I care more, right? As a company, you care about your revenue. So down, if you dive deeper into revenue, your revenue has a lot of parts, and not to mention, order is only one of them. If you define your success metric as the order number, you even mentioned as your user segments, there's a whole ads department there. And how do you measure the success for your people working on ads? Right? You're not even giving them credit.
That's right.
So if you're the CEO or CPO, you should start with revenue and then break it down into where the revenue come from, right? Order is one of them, ads is the other, right? You probably have commission from like businesses. Probably commission from the business is another revenue stream, right? You then break it down into, okay, then how do I define successful orders, right? From the ads, how do I define like ads revenue, right? Ads revenue is typically your ads partner and they're like spending on your platform, right? But at the same time, you have to deliver results. So you have delivered ads revenue as well, but it's fine. Like your interviewer won't struggle a lot with like your understanding on ads. If you're just like saying ads revenue, that's fine, right? And then moving on to business partners, then you want to talk about like what is the commission rate, and also how many business partners do you have, right? So you have to start from the really important metrics to define whether your company is still there or not, and then dive deeper into each segments, right? And how you want to define success. And also, if I am a stricter interviewer, I would ask you whether daily is a good measurement. You have to, so first of all, again, I'm your data scientist counterpart, right? For all the metrics, you talk about some metrics. For all the metrics below, you have to tell me what is the time range. And it's good that you mentioned daily at first. So I would assume that for the other like sub-metrics, you just forget about like the duration. But for the first one, you have to tell me why it is daily, not weekly. Whether people use grocery delivery app as a daily habit or as a weekly habit, right?
Mhm.
You need to tell me if you want to define daily, why? If you want to define weekly, why, right?
Mhm.
And also when you talk about advertisers, you talk about click-through rate of ads.
Mhm.
If I'm stricter, right? Like if you expect a 5 out of 5 answer, then I would double click on that because ads have different objectives. You have charge by reach. Basically, you can understand it as impression, but it is the unique number of people that you reach, right? You can charge by reach. You can charge by clicks. You can charge by website visits. You can charge by orders. You can charge by a lot of things, right? So you have to break it down to each as objective and see what is the deliverables you have for each objectives. And also when you talk about each user segment in your sub-metrics, I'm wondering like what is the framework you use when you dive deeper into your users, right? What is the criteria you want to use? Let's use driver as an example. You talk about number of trips completed. You talk about number of drivers that complete a trip each day. And you also talk about number of canceled requests.
Mhm.
I have a very rough hunch about what you are trying to say here, right? But I would expect you, before you dive deeper and talk about metric, you probably want to talk about, okay, what do I care about drivers? I care about volume, which is basically number of trips that they deliver, and maybe the number of drivers even sign up, right? I care about how many drivers on the platform. And quality, I want to see how many of them have like canceled requests. Or if you go back to the mission, they talk about they want everyone to have more time to enjoy together. So you care about delivery time, right? You care about average time. So that's the quality part. And then third, you talk about the number of drivers that complete a trip each day, which is pretty good. You care about ecosystem. You need to highlight that at the beginning. Why do you care about ecosystem? You want to highlight your ecosystem efficiency, right? Because this is a resourcing allocation system. You want them to be efficient and you want them to be effective because you don't want to, like, even if that one driver is very efficient, you don't want to put all the tasks on him because you want all the drivers to have money to earn and also they have a pretty reasonable workload, right? So they don't churn from your platform. So you care about ecosystem. I would expect you to highlight these criteria before you dive deeper into the sub-metrics.
Got it. So just making sure that I'm understanding this correctly, if it's okay. Yeah, just wanted to review my methodology a little bit. Right now, I directly dived in, but I think in addition, instead of that, what I should be doing is kind of outline expectation of kind of like good behaviors from each user group. Like for example, and then I can dive into everything they were talking about earlier. From customer, it is about like, for example, like having good orders, like having good UX, and then like number of like ordering well, blah blah blah. Like not really thinking much right now, but kind of just diving into the expectation of like what are some of the good behaviors that will lead to the North Star metrics, and from there developing metrics to track each of those. Would you say that's a better methodology, or is there anything else that I should add?
Not necessarily. I
Got
think
it.
it depends on the user segment that you're talking about. So when you talk about driver, you want to, first of all, like no matter which customer you are talking about, you want to go back to your mission, right? And based on the mission, you probably have a better understanding of what are the criteria you should care about. And then if you let's say talk about consumer side, you probably want to go with the user journey, right? That's fair. When you talk about driver, you probably want to talk about more about the ecosystem and how you like allocate the resources, right? So for each user segment, you probably want to use different framework, but you have to highlight the criterias ahead. Like what are the things that you care about? Most likely you come from mission, but you probably also have your own understanding.
For determining metrics for each of the groups. Okay, so just making sure that I'm still understanding this correctly, and thank you for the time and the patience and the clarifications. So what I'm trying to do is um use different frameworks to determine metrics for each of the groups, which would mean that I guess I'm not as clear on exactly like how I will be using a different framework for each of the sessions. Like for example, this one, or how would I be communicating that to people? Like for example, would I just be like, still, not really necessarily having another part, but just in the submetrics before I begin with each of the before I begin with each of the groups, do I just, for example, say like the framework I'm going to be using here is like dot dot dot, or I guess
Yeah.
I'm mostly like kind of interested in the way to communicate like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah. For
Mhm.
example, right?
Yeah.
If you want to say like consumer side, buyer side,
Mhm.
you can say like, okay, if we talk about buyer side, now we go back to mission, saying like we want everyone to have access to food they love and have more time to enjoy it together. So I would want to go through the buyer user journey to say, first of all, they have to be on Instacart, right? So I would want to check daily active user on Instacart. And then after that, they have to go into a store and make an order, right? So I want to see how many orders they started. And then I want to see how many the orders are successfully delivered. And also like what is the total spending they have on the orders, right? You probably like, this is how you want to structure this from consumer. This is from a user journey perspective. And then when you probably talk about the retailers, user journey probably doesn't make sense for a retailer, because for retailer, the managers for like our partner users, they probably do not go on Instacart every single day. So in terms of like retailers, you say, okay, these are the criteria that I care about. So first, because on the mission, we talk about, we want everyone to have access to the food they love. So everybody has different taste. So we have to make sure there is a diversity on the categories, right? We have to onboard as many businesses as possible and make sure they have a diversity category. So I want to see how many categories we have, and also how many new businesses we onboard, or like how many businesses are on this platform, right? And also you want to talk about, and also I don't want them to just like be on the platform and churn from the platform, right? So we have to give them profit or give them revenue. So I want to see, you can say like number of goods sold, or what I prefer more is the number of revenue share for the businesses. And maybe there are strategic partners for us, for example, Walmart, Target, right? These strategic partners define our success in a lot of ways. So maybe for a lot of the strategic partners, I would want to call them out. So I would want to know what is the annual share, or what is the quarterly or monthly share with Walmart. How much is the monthly share with Target, right? Because these are strategic partners. But maybe there is a long tail. There are like 100 businesses on our platform, but like we don't want to like talk with them every single day. Maybe there are like smaller businesses which they probably don't have a digital platform themselves, and they depend on Instacart to drive them businesses. Then I will probably just look at it in a very macro way, saying that I want to see the total revenue shared with these businesses, and in average, what is the revenue shared for each business, right? So this is like, you put what you care on the very top, and then dive deeper to talk about what are metrics that you care about.
Got it.
Like for
And
example, like how I analyze retailer is different with consumer, right? Consumer, I care about the user anymore, because the consumer have a clear user journey, and for like basically like for each team they take care of different parts of the user journey. But for the retailers, you care about different things, and it doesn't necessarily to go with the user journey, because the retailer users probably don't come to your platform every single day. So like this is my take, but you probably will have your own framework, as long as you can do the reasoning and also make sure that you have a very legit framework to lay out all the metrics that you want to talk about. Is totally fine.
got it. Yeah. So just really quickly, then making sure that I'm fully understanding this, internalizing it as my own, because I definitely want to make sure that I can utilize this in my
No
own.
worries. Exactly.
Yeah. So go back to the mission first. I just came up with something for drivers, for example. When I was thinking about drivers, if I were to present again, I'll first go back to the mission and see, okay, we're trying to bring food to people's table with speedy delivery as fast as possible. So then the area that I would really be focusing on for the drivers, who are the main revenue through which this happens, is that we're going to have a large amount of supply of drivers that is distributed evenly throughout the country. So how do we guarantee large supply? Then we can look at churn rate. Then we can look at whether or not there are new drivers joining the platform. Overall, just kind of seeing if we can like still maintain the supply. Whether or not drivers are making enough money could also potentially be another thing, like looking into some qualitative data on whether they're satisfied with their job. And then also thinking about the distribution, like I will look into data for the distribution, like how many drivers are in one specific area, and correlate that to the overall number of Instacart users in each of the regions. So do you think that kind of gets more to what the framework method that you're talking about?
Totally. Yeah, that would be definitely 5 out of 5 answer. I don't really care like whether you really lay out all the metrics on our daily dashboard. But I would care that you have the structure to tackle this question, right? Like if you think about defining a daily dashboard, that is like a lot of team, a lot of leadership discuss for like several days to generate a daily dashboard for the CEO to view every single day, right? So I won't expect you to get to the answer 100%, but I would want your structure and how you think about it.
Got it. Cool. Thank you so much.
So like for example, like I care more about whether you lay out what you care about before each user segment, and whether you have a framework to tackle down the submetrics more than like it's fine. You don't like mention the revenue, or like you don't like you only mention, for example, the number of order rather than like considering the order spending. Because for me, that is like a careless mistake. If I tell you this, right, in the future, you won't even forget about this. But I want to know that you as a candidate is educatable. So you telling me that you have a framework to follow is the way that you clearly know how you tackle this problem. That is more important to me than whether your metrics is right or not.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Would you say is there any other feedback? I know we're running over time. We'd love to,
And long term, you didn't start from user segments, which you should. I just assume that you don't have enough time, which is fine. But ideally, you should also start from user segments, because for different audiences, you have different job to be done. And talking about AI, this is also a plus if you can get to what I'm going to mention. So if you think about how you this time you remember to define successful, right? But what is really success for a company to integrate AI?
I think making the work efficiency is definitely something, like making it faster, making things much faster. Done faster and higher quality. Oh, what was that?
Faster for consumer, or for which user you're talking about?
Faster on the backend side for providing a more streamlined service, or like people can do less work to produce more results. And also, I guess, yes, as the chat was saying, revenue, like if AI was able to drive more revenue, but I think that's more ambiguous.
Okay, so you're telling me that you want Instacart, because I'm not quite sure what are the AI applications from Instacart. So you are more focusing on the internal integrations rather than their offering to members.
Yes. I think that like when it comes to offering AI to specific users, there has to be a lot of like working together with the UX designer, UX research team to ensure that that's something that they want. Like just plainly offering an AI solution to people, in my personal opinion, sometimes can do more harm than good.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. If you make that assumption, you have to tell the interviewer. Because if me as a product manager from LinkedIn, I would assume if Instacart is integrated with AI, it is not even it is not definitely not only internal, right? Because nowadays is a very chaotic era for technology industry. And if you don't have an AI solution for your consumers, it is very likely that your ecosystem, your marketplace will be disrupted by AI agents from other companies. So most likely the company should have a solution for consumers. But if you're saying like, so I would want you to align with the interviewer before you dive deeper into the AI solution, saying that this is my understanding, right? If you talk about the internal integrations, you just talk about internal. If you say that I have internal and external, then say out loud, right? Because here, when you talk about this, I feel like you have some assumptions, but you didn't communicate that with the interviewer. So if you're talking about internal, then you want to save cost, basically, right? You want to save for my labor cost. And if you are saving cost, then basically you are targeting profit, right? Because the less cost you have, the more profit you will have, right? It's not revenue, right? Remember, profit equals revenue minus cost, right? So you can say that you want to optimize for profit, company profit, or you want to optimize for margin, right? Which also like is the same thing. So this is what we want to like lay out when you talk about internal. But if you are talking about external, like you're offering to members, then what you said was very valuable, that you need to talk about this with interviewer. If it is an external offering, you want to make sure you start from member job to be done, and whether your AI offering is actually helpful and valuable for members, right? So you don't make assumptions yourself and say that now I want to focus on internal. You want to talk about either from your observation, you haven't seen Instacart have any like consumer facing AI solutions, or you're saying like maybe it is like like not haven't been in production yet, like whatsoever, like you don't know whether they have investment in this area, but you should say that from your opinion, like AI is like a fever right now, right, for a tech industry. Everybody is applying AI, but we have to make sure what is the job to be done for members and whether our AI solution is actually creating value for members. This will be like a golden line in your interview if you actually say out loud, right? Because this is like what everybody is discussing in the tech industries and like what is really the top of mind for every leaders. So you want to make sure that you are a very logical and sensible product manager in this AI fever. And if you are talking about AI, right, no matter it is internal and external, then there is an AI cost in it, right? So you mentioned the ROI of AI integrations. You probably want to say it more clear, saying that AI is a very consuming solution, considering like the computation, the cost, and also applying for like maybe applying third-party AI API is also a cost, right? Or like hiring like machine learning engineer, researcher is also a cost. So is it really short-term profitable to integrate AI solution to our company? If it is not short-term profitable, it's totally fine, right? Because that's what happened whenever there is a new technology coming up. But what is our long-term strategy when the short-term is not very profitable, right? And whether there is a way for us to do short-term profitable, because if it is an AI fever for all the tech companies, it's also an AI fever for consumers as well, right? Probably consumers would love to pay for AI solution when it is actually not very helpful for them short-term, right? So like, is there a way for you to be profitable short-term? And if there isn't a solution in the short term, whether we can make sure that it is going to be profitable long-term, right? So if you lay this out loud, this is like going to be like a 7 out of 5 answer. The interviewer will be like, oh my God, drop my pants, I'm going to hire you right away. Good answer. So yeah, that's all my feedback.
Got it. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. Can I ask, actually, I'll just ask one clarifying question. I think there's a lot of value, as you mentioned, in kind of like close reading the kind of value proposition from the mission statement. Do you think it's ever appropriate to ask, do you think it's ever appropriate to like ask the interviewer, I'm not as familiar with Airbnb, do you mind if I look up their mission statement? Or do you think is wiser for me to do it from memory?
I think it is totally legit to do that.
Okay to like look up and ask for values.
But you have to do it quick because you don't have much time in your interview. So probably you want to have like a very general idea of the big tech companies. Let's say if I'm asking you the mission for let's say Square, or for Stripe, you probably don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because you probably don't use the product on a daily basis. But if I ask you mission about Google, about Facebook, about, come on, let's say LinkedIn as a big tech company, okay? LinkedIn,
Yeah.
you have to know the mission, not word by word, but like in your top of mind, you have to know like Facebook is organizing the world's information, and Facebook is connecting people together. LinkedIn, also social media, is connecting people to like professionals together, and make them more successful. Office 365 is to like make the like people's life more productive or more successful, whatever. So like you have to have a general idea of what they're looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that.